Beirut, an infected regeneration. This is the story of a centrifugal living city that has lost its fractal properties. Fractals, being the key to living organization, were heavily destroyed in Beirut City Center, resulting in a city with an infected and contagious heart, struggling to regenerate itself after the 1975 civil war. The analysis of Beirut City Center in comparison to the close by Mar Mikhael neighborhood aims to develop an understanding of the reasons hindering Beirut's regeneration. It all started in a center of a three-continent center, an urban matrix made by the superimposition of various settlements principles, Phoenician, Greek, Roman, Byzantine, Arab, Medieval, Ottoman, and French, each adding a veil to the city, following every deconstruction and reconstruction. In the early 1900s, Beirut started to grow enormously. Several infrastructure projects took place: the port expansion, the train station located on the edge of the city along Tripoli Road linking Beirut to northern cities, and the tramway lines. Pedestrian stairs were built to connect Ashrafiyeh area to the transport node. During the 1920s, with the French Mandate, Beirut witnessed a rise of the bourgeois society, which led to a mushrooming construction of central hall houses along Tripoli Road, and the creation of the Medawar quarter along the shoreline. During this period, Armenian and later Palestinian migrants settled in Burj Hammoud across the river, providing cheap craftsmen light industries, which soon triggered an industrial economic boom along the river and the train station area. In consequence, Tripoli Road changed name to Armenia Street. During the 1940s, a further expansion of the port disconnected Medawar quarter from the sea. It resulted in a gross turnover towards Armenia Street. This area, that was shaped as a space of mobility flows, started to transform into a neighborhood, generating social flows through the provided transitional space between the high bourgeois General Gouraud Street and the low-income craftsman area, resulting in a very socially diverse neighborhood, an example of what Castells calls space of flows, defined as the material organization of time-sharing social practices that works through flows. After the end of the French mandates, the rise of Beirut Golden Age reflected a moving, lively city center, overlapping all sorts of day and night activity: cafes, bars, cinema, theater, restaurants, and markets of all kinds, with the expression of the Lebanese society love of life, generating a piazza of social mixity and diversity. The lively city center used to feed the surrounding neighborhood, but with the beginning of the city's modernization, small neighborhoods started to lose their economic flows. This started to manifest in the Mar Mikhael neighborhood, when the seaside elevated highway along Charles Hello bus station were created, replacing the tramway service, and especially when the train infrastructure stopped. This action snatched the essential flows out of the neighborhood, weakening its relation to the center and other neighboring cities. It led to completely disconnecting the neighborhood from the waterfront, creating lots of lost spaces on its walled edge. From this moment, Mar Mikhael neighborhood economic activity was reduced, which stagnated its development and started later its decaying phase. And then came the drastic 1975 civil war. The divided Western Muslim Beirut and Eastern Christian Beirut transformed the center into a battle arena, which resulted in a heavily destroyed and bombed city center. After the war, the city lost its center, so activity moved to sub-centers. In 1990, the Downtown Urban Development Plan by Solidar started, a private company assigned by the government to redevelop the center. In the process, ownership rights were taken over, which transferred all the powers to Solidar. With the prioritization of real estate development, a tabula rasa process started, raising the old intricate urban fabric and replacing it by huge block parcels, changing the center masses and voids proportions, implementing international architects' projects in the aim of creating a new image of Beirut, targeting higher income groups from the Arab Gulf countries and physically disconnecting the center from the city through a surrounding ring road. This was an intended act of gentrification that sadly started to contaminate self-regenerated surrounding areas through the creation of high incentives for the real estate development sector, which started Beirut gentrification cycle. During this period, informal chaotic urban growth happened in other areas. With the huge social gap created by the new ghostly city center, social life started to manifest in other areas of Beirut, creating sub-centers with nightlife hubs. People started to look for places that they can relate to, that they can identify with, in order to fulfill their physiological and self-actualization needs. These places are affordance spaces. As defined by Gibson, they are spaces with invitational qualities that attract certain types of animals to settle in certain types of niches. In the late 1995, the startup animals of the self-organized regeneration process were the artists and the creative class that were attracted by the human scale and deteriorated physical environment of Mono, an area on the demarcation line with a large supply of affordance cheap spaces. These animals created new niches in the environment that attracted other animals. Soon the arrival of bars and clubs made Mono the city's trendiest neighborhood, and after the infrastructure upgrade undertaken by the Council for Development and Reconstruction, the creative class was immediately priced out from Mono. Today, Mono entered phase 3 gentrification and became a quiet residential neighborhood with very few bars and restaurants, defined by new high-rise apartments. These artists started to leave Mono in the early 2000s and made Gemmese the new next nightlife hotspot of the city. 2009 was the peak of Gemmese nightlife activity, which soon started to die when the rent prices started to increase, displacing artists and residents from the neighborhood, affecting the neighborhood's social diversity, knowing that affordable housing is considered as a key factor in maintaining social mixity. The artists had to find new niches and moved to Mar Mikhael area at the end of Armenia Street. Mar Mikhael, a decaying neighborhood left for light industries and mechanics, witnessed a mushrooming effect of artists and creatives and was soon classified as a creative cluster. The unique human-scale environment of the area stimulated artists to highly invade the lost spaces, making it an expression space, filling the spaces with street art, and painting all pedestrian stairs in order to raise awareness about their historical importance. This created much stronger attractive niches for the new affordable bars that soon mushroomed densely along the main street, extending the nightlife to the streets, making the street one outdoor hangout place. So Mar Mikhael regained its space of social and economic flows. It became the new hub that replaces the Golden Age cinemas, fulfilling the biggest society's social affordance, which is provided by other people. Of course, this created conflicts with the long-term residents due to competing parking spaces and noise pollution. It also created an economic vacuum to light industries, replaced by the new bar's booming economy. Gentrification also started in the neighborhood by the arrival of the new upper-class bars. So in a highly consumerist environment, can Beirut regain its public life? The big threat is a new construction law that makes Mar Mikhael an affordance space for real estate developers. A law made by developers, voted by developers, for developers, increased the building's legal height and volume limits in bigger plots. And with the absence of laws that protects heritage building, real estate developers pressure house owners to sell in order to regroup the parcels and build their towers, evicting long-term tenants and demolishing traditional decaying old houses. The threat became bigger when the new rent law was issued in 2014, which calls for the gradual liberalization of the old rent law, which can evict around half of the tenants of the area. This creates a big displacement pressure and threatens the neighborhood's unique human-scale environment. Therefore, there is a need to claim the right to the city by claiming long-term inhabitants instead of property owners as the rightful appropriator of urban land. But claim to who? To the government that wanted to implement a new highway passing through Mar Mikhael, demolishing 30 traditional houses and occupying the one of the few remaining green spaces in the city? These events created new niches for the civil society to rise and protest, making Mar Mikhael a home for the civil society organizations like Ashrafiyya 2020, Save Beirut Heritage, Nahnu and Heaven for Artists, fighting through placemaking and ephemeral urbanism actions to stop developers and governmental institutions from contaminating Beirut's self-organized neighborhoods. Well, the dream is when the civil society conquers the war, reclaiming their city center, stitching it with the tiered urban fabric to bring back Beirut's prosperous age. To conclude, Adorani said that Beirut has self-regeneration in its genes due to its episodes of deconstruction and reconstruction. Then why the last episode of reconstruction is leading only to destruction? Clearly, the actions of the modernist planning and real estate development hid the fractal properties of Beirut nucleus and mutated its genes, resulting in an infected nucleus that only transmit viral molecules paralyzing self-regenerating nodes, which stimulated the action of defensive mechanisms, creating antibodies from the civil society voices. But the antibodies' production remains too moderate, weakening its defense against this enormous virus. If placemaking is the tool to recreate sense of belonging so that the Lebanese society can re-identify with Beirut City Center, would it be sufficient to reconstruct affordance spaces, creating new niches for self-organization in such a rigid and destroyed human-scale environment? How can changes on policy level be realized to attenuate the virus activity and empower antibodies to digest it? Then what would be the cure for Beirut to regain its state of equilibrium and become a sustainable living organism with balanced nodes capable to bounce back after shocks?